Jaden Edison, I'm the public education reporter with the Tribune. Really glad to be here today and continue this important discussion. I guess we got big shoes to fill after the first discussion was had. But yeah, we can go down our panel if each person wants to introduce themselves, and then we'll get right into the discussion given the time restrictions that we have. So,
good morning. Is this on?
yeah, you're on. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you. My name is Stacy Childs. I'm one of the 15 members of the State Board of Education. I represent the Houston area. I just started my third year in my second term, so I'm so excited to be doing that work. By day, I am a criminal defense attorney, and prior to being an attorney, I was a 4th and 5th grade teacher through the Teach for America pipeline, and I'm very proud of that. So thank you for having me.
Testing. Okay, awesome. Hi, my name is Cadence Carter. I'm a former student of KDISD. I'm a queer rights and student/youth activist in the Houston area.
Hi, I'm Carol Malone. I'm the Chief of Schools at Hutto ISD. I work in both human resources and school leadership, and so I'm very proud to be here today.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot to unpack and a lot to talk about, and obviously there are so many things in this that we won't be able to get to, but I think the first panel really set the floor for what are the challenges that the state is facing. When we talk about teacher preparation, teacher certification, and what our approach really is to talk about solutions, right? Moving forward, like what are the things that schools and districts and leaders, what are the things they should be thinking about as we try to meet the moment and address the challenges that are facing our teacher workforce, but also, our students, right? Which are, at the end of the day, are the people, who the state is trying to serve the most. And so I wanted to open it up with this kind of broad, almost like philosophical question. We were talking about this in the back. And I think each panelist will have some really interesting insight here, but I'm curious to hear from y'all's standpoint, like, what makes an effective teacher in 2025, right? When we talk about that, to each person, what does that mean to y'all as we talk today? And if you want to start with Kara, if you want to start first, yeah, we can come
I don't mind jumping in. One of the things I think about a lot is it goes back to the work of a researcher named John Hattie. Know Thy Impact. I think an effective teacher is one that's constantly looking to see if kids are learning, making sure that they're monitoring, but also thinking about the needs of students. Sometimes if a student's hungry, they're not quite ready to learn. And so all of those pieces are huge in being a teacher. And so it's a pretty extensive job to get through all of the barriers and actually make sure kids are learning and able to progress to the next grade level.
Mm-hmm. Cadence, if you want to.
I think nowadays it's very difficult to be an effective teacher because teachers nowadays have to wear so many different hats. They have to be teachers and sometimes also counselors and sometimes also parents and also so many different things. And so it's very difficult to be an effective all-around teacher. But I feel like what makes a very good educator is someone who's able to be engaging and able to grab attentions and able to keep those attentions on what's really important. Because when a subject becomes entertaining or interesting, the retention is so much higher.
Mm-hmm. Stacey.
So for me, I think there are 4 things that make an effective teacher. The first thing is just having understanding. There are some great first-year teachers out there, but for the most part, teaching is like fine wine. You get better with time, right? So just having that understanding that you're not going to get it all right the first year or the second year. Secondly, just having a level of humility, right? I think that we've done a disservice to the teaching workforce by breeding this culture of perfectionism. Like you have to get it right. You have to have 100% on your STAR scores, but just knowing that you can ask for help. You can reach out to veteran teachers. You can reach out to your administrators if there's something that you're struggling on in the classroom. Finally, just being data minded in the back of your mind. And I think sometimes we weaponize data too much, but data is your friend, right? So just knowing that data, when it comes to your students, tells a story about how you can improve your student outcomes. And finally, just a relentless list. Like, I didn't get it right today, but I have tomorrow. I didn't get it right today, but I have tomorrow. Just a relentless list to make sure that you're doing all you can for students. So.
Yeah, no, this brings up a lot of interesting points. And Kara, I wanted to go to you, right? Because I know there was a lot of talk about teacher preparation and teacher certification. And I want to open up that question to kind of frame a little bit like how each person, thinks about these issues, but also that's probably informed how in your district y'all have really structured your approach to trying to, bring in, aspiring educators, from the community to come and work and to grow and to, work with students. And so I'd be curious if you could break down for us what's happening in Hutto, which is, I read a national article last week where y'all were cited. Y'all have been all over the place. What's going on in Hutto right now in terms of how y'all are addressing this issue of trying to bring in effective and high quality teachers?
I'm so glad you asked. We actually have the first Department of Labor registered teacher apprenticeship program in Central Texas. I have 67 who are in the process of becoming teachers right now in my district, and we're so proud of this program. And so part of the program came out of the realization that we as a school district have to own the issues that we have. Hutto is a fast growth district. We're the 4th fastest growing in this area. And so that means that we're opening a school almost every year. I'm adding about 40 new positions every year. And like everybody else, we have about 18% attrition every year. So with all of that, we couldn't just sit around and wait for something to happen. We have a wonderful residency program that we started with T-class funds, and we wanted more. We couldn't get as many residents as we thought we could grow. 63% of my teachers have over 5 years of experience, so we have a tremendous capacity to grow teachers. And so we embarked on our own journey of thinking about how do we bring people to the profession? How do we give them experiences where they are ready to be teachers, which is a huge component with retention. And so we started this journey last January. We did an information night for an apprenticeship program, and 197 people came. And so I looked around the room, and we are constantly hoping to fill our classrooms with teachers who represent our students, and the room represented that very thing. And so we ended up with over 90 applicants. We interviewed over 70 people. We originally said we would have 50 apprentices, but once we started the program, then we had people within our district who were suddenly interested. And so we ended up with 67. At the end of this year, I will have all but 4 continuing into next year. We just signed 6 of those who have finished our program. But what they do is they earn and learn. So we employ them. We do have 13 that were already employed with our district. We employ them. We put them in wonderful situations where they are learning to become a teacher. We give them a half a day of training every month. There's 4 different levels. They come to us with as few as 0 college hours all the way up to they're almost done. We help them enroll in a program. They're completing their education. They are not in the classroom alone teaching. They are working under the direction of a certified teacher, and they are becoming fantastic teachers. And so we are thrilled because we realize that there are people right in front of us who do want to become teachers. 18 of our students graduated from Hutto High School. One graduated last year, but the rest have been out a little bit. And what we realized was that there are so many people out there with some college, and they just don't have a path. And so I began to realize maybe we have an opportunity problem more than we have people who don't want to become teachers. And so when we changed that narrative, we began to look for solutions.
What are y'all learning? And I want to open it up to the other panelists as well, but just curious, what are y'all learning from having, you talked about, I think you said 18 of folks in the program who are from the community, right? What's the value in that as opposed, not to say that teachers who are not from a certain area can't go in and be an effective, teacher, but what have you learned specifically with that demographic of folks who have come on and started working with students in y'all's district?
Yeah, there's a huge opportunity with people who already know the area, may already live there, want to be a part of that area. Our apprentice is signed to stay with us 3 years after they get their certification. So for some of them, they are making a 7-year commitment to us. And so we have people who want to be there, people who want to double their income. them, people who want that social mobility, and people who love kids. And what a great combination that we have and we found. And I'm going to say, we actually have a showcase on Thursday, but I'm going to say that that all of our apprentices, when you hear them talk, they know where they're going, they know what they're going to do, and that pathway being laid out for them has been huge for them as they work to become a teacher.
Caden, so I wanted to ask you, because when we talk about the effect that, having teachers who are familiar with the community, familiar with students, for you, right, from your perspective, what should, decision makers be thinking about when we think about preparation through that particular lens of not only having, what the state would label, an effective teacher in the classroom, but also having a teacher who understands students, right, who can work with a vastly diverse, student body, here in Texas. I was wondering if you could just speak to kind of the value of that in your experiences as a student and having teachers, from various backgrounds who can relate.
Of course. So I actually went to a two-way immersion school before I moved to Katy as a kid. And all of my teachers were from all sorts of different backgrounds, all over the world, all different types of people. And that made a lot of the students there feel seen, like their teacher understood them, like their teacher understood where they were from and who they are. And I feel like having a good group of teachers from a bunch of different backgrounds in a bunch of different places can be helpful in that sense as well. On the topic of training and preparation, I think sensitivity training could be useful, as well as training in order to de-escalate verbal bullying. Because personally, I feel that as of recent, a lot of bullying and harassment isn't taken seriously in schools unless it is physical.
I'm curious, kind of building that, Stacy, for you, I mean, having experience like in the classroom, but also in this position you're in now, like, it's like you had the kind of boots on the ground experience, but now you're in like a unique position to be able to have some influence on the process and how the state, responds to the issues that it's facing. And what are things top of mind for you along these same lines, right? When you're, sitting at the table with, colleagues, whether it be the State Board of Education or when you're talking to lawmakers, trying to get them to understand kind of where we are right now, what are you bringing forth from a solution standpoint, trying to get them to kind of get on board with where the state needs to go?
That's a big question. I think apprenticeship models like what you're doing at Huddle ISD is important. Making sure that we're growing teachers from the areas in which they're going to teach is important, because you understand the nuance that those particular students bring. It will change how you discipline students. It will change really how you teach them, because you see their uniqueness. You see the exact issues that they bring into the classroom that may not have anything to do with academics, but influence academics, right? So for me, I'm always trying to keep the stories of the teachers top of mind when we're having these conversations at the SBOE meetings, because I think the teachers' voices get lost. And one more thing I wanted to talk about in terms of uncertified teachers. There are a lot of uncertified teachers entering the teacher workforce, but I think we need to have a more candid and a more serious conversation about how we keep them in the classroom. There are other jobs that they could have chosen, right? There are other professions that they could have gone into, but I think we need to do a better job of supporting those teachers, because they are filling the gaps that we have right now. So we need to meet them where they are to make sure that not only do they come for a year or two, but they persist and stay in the classroom.
Are we thinking about this in as nuanced of a way as we should? Hear me out. The thing that often comes to mind is, yes, the state has had an increasing reliance on, teachers without formal, classroom training. At the same time, what you've seen, though, is you've seen people be able to access the profession in ways that they haven't historically been able to, right? If you look at the overwhelming majority of roughly 384,000 teachers in the state of Texas right now, the overwhelming majority of those teachers look nothing like the vastly diverse student population in Texas that is increasingly getting more and more diverse. And so the one thing that the uncertified teacher, a lot of people have dubbed it a crisis, right? And maybe rightfully so when you look at a lot of the data. I know Texas Tech has done some research on this and others at UT. But how should we be thinking about kind of the access thing? What can we learn from this situation and take away from it? Like maybe, this isn't, this shouldn't be the primary way through which educators get into the workforce, but also there are things we can learn from that. Like, where do y'all come in on that kind of conversation when we talk about access?
So I'd love to chat about that. Hutto is a district of innovation. I currently have 16% of my teachers on the road to certification. I can tell you that this past year, I repurposed a position to have a certification specialist. And at the end of this year, I have 39% who have completed their certification of those 16%. So it's a challenge. It's hard. I do have to say that districts would really have a tough time filling all their positions without being able to let people into the field. We do have a requirement that our teachers on the road to certification have to complete it within 3 years. So that has been a nice component to make sure it just doesn't go on forever. But I think mentorship comes into play in all of this. One of the things I would love to see is really great stipends for teachers for mentorship. Mentorship varies. You have somebody who puts a ton of time into it, and you have someone who hardly meets the person who's their mentor. And how do we truly get people closer to the classroom before it's all theirs? And I think a lot about different teaching models. I think a lot about different things because I can't think of any other profession where we just say, okay, now it's yours, go forth. And, we wouldn't do this to doctors. We don't typically do that to attorneys. And why do we do that to teachers? And so how can we find ways to have that mentorship where there's some oversight and there's some guidance, because there are people who come into the profession, and I know because when somebody leaves the profession, they sit in my office and I have a conversation. And there are some people that the amount of support we're able to provide right now is definitely not what they need. They need a lot of support, and being able to individualize that and being able to do it differently than we are today would have great benefits for us.
Yeah, I was gonna say there has to be a new way that we support uncertified or new teachers. In Houston ISD, almost half of the teachers that are coming to Houston ISD are uncertified. And I think if we are bringing that many uncertified teachers to a district, we also need to rethink how we're supporting those teachers. I hear from some of my constituents that are entering the classroom and they're just like, I'm done. It's year one. I'm stressed out. I can't do it. But what happened to that fire when you got the contract? What happened to that fire that you had when you said yes, right? So I think we are doing teachers a disservice by not capitalizing on that fire that they have when they enter the classroom by holding their hand and supporting them along the way. So mentorship is something that we can do. I think we need to do more effective modeling in the classroom so they can see how lessons are taught. Because some of the teachers are telling me, hey, I got this evaluation. I got a 3 out of 10, but I don't know how to get to a 7 or 8. So I think more modeling to demonstrate how effective teaching is done would help, and not holding them to a certain bar without helping them get to that bar is what we need to do a better job of in this state.
It's interesting. Everybody brought forth different points. The one thing I didn't hear, which is a priority across the street, is teacher pay. And so to me, that leads me to believe, and I actually visited Hutto a few months ago before the session, and it was interesting. We were sitting in with this organization, and there were a bunch of teachers who came in, and that was a similar theme, right, where didn't really hear a lot about teacher pay. It was more about the preparation standpoint. And so the reason I bring that up, and I'm curious to hear y'all's perspective on this, is are lawmakers looking at this too narrowly as we talk about right now? The governor, one of the top priorities, teacher pay. The Senate, their primary method through which they want to raise public school funding. There are other things, but teacher pay is a big part of that. What are they missing? Or is there something that needs to be included in the conversation that's not currently being talked about enough?
I do say teachers need a livable wage, and I think that's huge. And one of the things that teachers will talk about is they may be in the field for 25 years and they're not seeing much difference in that pay range. And so I think that is a huge component that we have to consider. I think there are a lot of other things, though, and sometimes for teachers, I think there's the stress of accountability. I think there's all of those pieces. We're a TIA district, love that. I have 88 teachers who get that extra pay, but I love what Stacy said about how do we support people to get to that. I would say, the majority of your teachers are motivated by service, not by pay, but that doesn't mean they don't need to be paid for what they do. If we want this to be a profession, then we need to pay as we would in a profession, whether it's a three-tier system or something different. I think pay is a first step. But it's a hard job. And I know when we talk about, and I was reminded of this recently, and I taught for 16 years, but I started when I was 21. And, somebody asked me about my early experiences, and I had forgotten that at year 3, I was ready to walk away from the profession. And it was exhausting. I felt very isolated. And I ended up making a move and taking a part-time teaching position. And for some reason, it was different. But it was different because I had taught long enough to develop the efficacy that I needed to believe that I could teach and believe my kids could learn. And so there's so many components. And I think for some people, the job is so hard that they feel like they're not paid enough. Both of those go hand in hand. We have to make the job easier, and we have to pay them for what they do.
I have a very maybe unpopular opinion about this. If we were paying teachers $100,000 per year, do you think that we would have as much of a shortage as we have now? I don't think we would. So whoever hears this, Governor Greg Abbott, I hope you hear this. Please let us pay our teachers $100,000 per year or more, because I think that will attract some of the top students that are graduating from these colleges, and even high school students that are undecided about what they're going to major in or what they're going to do would start considering teaching more heavily. And I think that will do a great service to the education profession if we pay teachers what they're worth. Because to your point, we are asking teachers to be military sergeants and social workers and attorneys and moms and dads. We are asking them to do those things, but we're not paying them to do all those jobs at once. So,
Go ahead, Cadence.
Like you said, I think a lot of teachers go into the profession because they want to teach, because they want to be of service, rather than the pay. But I think for some people, the pay is what turns some people away from joining the profession. As much as so many people want to teach and want to help the next generation, if they can't make livable money off of it, then they are more likely to turn to a different career. And like you said, I don't think we'd have as high as the teacher shortage if there was that incentive to stay, and if there was that incentive to join that workforce to begin with, whether or not they have that passion, which I feel like a lot of them do.
Yeah, we're narrowing down. We're in the last few minutes before we open up the Q&A. This took me down a whole rabbit hole where we could sit up here and start talking about the teacher incentive allotment and paper performance for another 30 minutes, but we don't have time. I do want to kind of wrap this discussion up with what's happening at the Capitol right now and how that informs how teachers need to proceed and teachers need to be best prepared moving forward. Right? I mean, we're seeing increasingly rhetoric and actions, against diversity, equity, inclusion. We're seeing a push toward disciplinary practices that the state had moved away from, in the last decade. We're seeing more and more the legislature, move in a direction where we want our teachers focused on merit and performance and not other things that also are important to student development. And so the reason I bring that up and frame it that way, because it's a really serious thing, because we know, I mean, you could probably point to, you could do a simple Google search and find any number of studies that talk about the importance of student well-being and how that correlates to student performance in the classroom, right? And so I'm curious to hear from each of you, given the political climate we're in here in Texas, what are the ways that teachers can best meet the moment for students and the diversity of the state students, given what's happening at the state level, and that ultimately teachers could ultimately be punished or penalized in many ways for doing the very thing they have to do to be able to get students on a pathway to success, not just surviving, but thriving?
Well, in my experience, and the experience that I've heard from my fellow classmates, students are more likely to pay attention and engage if the teacher is not only attention grabbing, but kind and respectful. Now, this isn't necessarily to say that every teacher has to be all their students' best friends in order to get them straight A's, but when a teacher connects with their students and makes those students feel heard and seen, they're more likely to pay attention in class and perform better. Now, about being penalized for this, KDISD about a year and a half ago, August, I think, passed a anti-trans policy that would force teachers to have to out their transgender students to their families, even if it was potentially dangerous for those students to be outed to their families, as well as require students to request permission from these students' parents in order to address these students how they wish to be addressed. And in this sort of situation, this does not lend itself to a safe, happy place for students to connect with their teachers. It leads to students feeling like they have to hide themselves and their identity from their teachers at school, which in a lot of these students' scenarios is the one place where they feel like they can be themselves. If they can't be themselves at home, they feel like they can be themselves at school. And with these types of...
Could you try again?
No one asked. And if they can't be themselves at home, they feel like the one place they can be themselves is at school with their friends and their favorite teachers. And if these teachers have to turn around and report these kids to their potentially unaccepting and or abusive parents, this leads to students feeling as if they have nowhere where they can be themselves, and this disconnect from not only their friends in their community, but their teachers and their education.
Yeah, I want to give you all opportunity too as we kind of wrap up here to chime in on this.
Yeah,
as well.
I know I answer this question with privilege because I don't have to worry about a principal or a superintendent coming down on me for answering this question this way. But as a teacher, you have the responsibility to teach and educate those little babies that are in your classroom. So that means you have to provide a safe environment. That means that in order to get them to learn, if you have to introduce them to story characters that look like them or that they can relate to, I believe it is your job to do so. And you need to do whatever you can to meet the needs of those students so they can meet the mark. So I understand the politics that are happening in our state right now, but I'm still standing on that question. Do whatever it takes to meet the very unique and nuanced needs of every student that's in your classroom.
And there's that huge piece of belonging and students being a part of the classroom and the school community. And I think we constantly have to continue to look for those gaps and to find ways for us to be much more intentional in how we're guiding kids and helping kids. Because at the end of the day, we want our kids to walk away ready for college, career, and military. And everything that we do, from the teacher in the classroom to how a teacher creates a positive culture, to the intentionality in which we build our programs, make a difference in whether our kids will be able to do that or not.
Matt? Oh.
Great. Thank you so much to our panel. We have a number of questions, and I hope we can get to as many here, but I'll also make sure that our panelists get a copy of all the questions so that you know what are on people's minds. Heather from Cypress Fairbanks asks, how can districts reorganize their professional development and training to support the growing number of uncertified teachers?
You might want to take a stab at that one.
I'll be glad to. It's differentiation. One of the things I started a few years ago was a very intentional new teacher orientation where they learn how to have a strong voice, how to manage transitions, how to do all of the little things that we forget about that set up a classroom for success. So the more we really think about where people are and not just having that professional development for the teachers alone, but the administrators go through that with the teachers so then they know how to coach. All of those pieces can make a huge difference.
I was just going to say, actually just asking the teachers what they need and giving them space to kind of dump like what their concerns are so you can meet their specific needs. My cousin is actually a first year, fourth grade math and science teacher in Houston. And she's just telling me everything that's going on in the classroom. And I'm like, did you tell your principal? No. Did you tell your appraiser? No. And I'm like, well, how are they going to be able to help you if you're not, expressing yourself? So I would say, to echo your comments, just giving these new and novice teachers the space to ask for support and get that support.
Do you think part of that, I'm assuming, that probably happens with a lot of new teachers. I mean, do you think that's the case where a lot of new teachers just assume that maybe I'm more overwhelmed than others? And is there a kind of dialogue or coaching that happens with new teachers to help that dialogue?
They definitely have to have a space for it, and I totally agree with you. They need that voice. There are a lot of things that they are maneuvering every single day, and they've got to have somebody they can talk to, if that's their mentor, if that's a new teacher team, whatever that is. A few years ago, I was in a district where we did some research of teacher retention. And one of the things we came up with was instead of just individual mentor-mentees, having actual teams on a campus. It seems like the more we get people out of isolation, the better. Sometimes I say this a lot, that resilience or perseverance should not be what we expect in order to keep somebody in the profession. Sometimes the people who make it are the ones that are just tough and keep coming back. But what can we set up where that's not the only factor in helping someone to be successful? So.
Celine from Pasadena asks, what are the most effective ways for educators to provide input to the SBOE or influence legislative decisions that impact teacher recruitment and retention?
Very good. I like that question.
Member Child?
So we have our next board meeting in June. And on the first day of our board meetings, you can come to testify on an item that's posted on our agendas. And then on Fridays, you can come and testify on any item related to education. So I'm screaming to the mountaintops to anybody who will listen, please come and testify, because we do factor in testimony very heavily. And if we don't hear from you, we really don't know what's going on. So I would urge teachers to come and testify, even email your testimony so we can at least read it. And then I know there are some teachers that feel like they may get in trouble from their districts if they're testifying in the capacity of being a teacher representing a district. So maybe finding a buddy or someone else who's not in the school to kind of give your testimony at the board meeting.
Be ready to be there all day when you go to the State Board of Education.
Please
They will
come.
sit there all day.
I think this speaks to the wonderful kind of tension and dialogue here with thinking about supporting students and supporting teachers. Leslie from Houston asks, student learning is set back with unprepared teachers. How do you prioritize supporting unprepared teachers while ensuring students are not set back for life while being in these unprepared teachers' classrooms?
Yeah, that's the hard one, because it is critical, and I think this is where districts really deal with, what do they spend their budget dollars on, and especially when they feel like it's difficult. I think you see instructional coaches as something that sometimes go away. I think it's really important that districts have the funds to be able to see their needs and fill those needs with support. But I always say that everybody's a coach, from the principal to the assistant principal to teacher leaders. I think we we all have to have a coaching mindset. And if nothing else, we really have to stop the isolation of the profession. And I know every district has PLCs, but are we really, changing what happens when somebody goes in their classroom and shuts their door? And so just continuing to do that and finding new ways to support, but everybody has to support. And we have to believe that we're all in this together. And really, at the end of the day, we're only successful when every student is successful. And so that joining together to make sure we are working as a team in our districts and in our schools is critical.
Cadence, any thoughts on that, just from having the student perspective and knowing people still in school?
Yes, so throughout my schooling years, there's definitely been a lot of classrooms I've been to where a student teacher is accompanied by a certified teacher. And that definitely, in my opinion, makes it so that both the students are learning the subject and the teacher and the student teachers are learning how to teach. And so it doesn't lead to kids being held back or not prepared for the next grade, because they are being taught by a certified teacher. And when the student teacher is teaching, they're always accompanied by a certified teacher who knows exactly what they're doing and knows how to teach and knows how to teach the student teacher how to teach as well.
It was mentioned that so many come to the profession motivated by service, but we know that being motivated by service, you typically need a culture, right, that is enriching and supportive. And Kate from Austin, I think this was earlier in the conversation, you talked about the culture of perfectionism. But what about the culture of politicization? We are in an environment where using teachers as a political punching bag is the norm. And I might add, you can think of politics in a macro level or even a personal level with parents and whatnot. What effect, Kate asks, what effect is that having on teacher morale? And while I think this was referenced, how do you begin to address that from various areas?
Well, in a time where everything is so heavily politicized, it, like you said, it is becoming normalized to treat teachers like a punching bag in this way. And like I mentioned, the KDISD anti-transgender policy, I think this lowers the morale of teachers because they have to sit there and know that if one of their students comes out to them as transgender, they have to potentially put them in danger with their family. And it can, I've heard from several of my own teachers, as well as my friends' teachers in KDISD, that it is soul-crushing to think about that kind of thing, to know that students that came out to them before the policy existed and before they knew that that was a risk that they were taking coming out to their teachers are now being put in danger of being outed by the people that they love and trust, their favorite teachers, and being potentially put in some dangerous situations. And so politicizing the identity of students and forcing teachers to participate in this transphobia can be demoralizing. And I've heard that several teachers are thinking about stepping away from different districts who have been passing similar policies because of this sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate that we are losing teachers because education is so politicized now. But I am just going to ask these teachers to organize and to get together and use their voices to speak out against the policies that are affecting them, their work, and affecting students negatively. So if that means going to the KDISD school board meeting or going to the SBOE meeting to make your voice heard, that's not just pomp and circumstance. That actually makes a real difference. I have seen in different districts where policies are overturned and they're changed because of the voices of teachers coming in number. I wouldn't suggest coming alone. I wouldn't suggest coming by yourself, because sometimes I will admit, if you hear just one thing, some of our leaders can ignore that. But when you come in number and you come continuously, I think you can make real change and make a real impact. So I would say all hope is actually not lost, even though we're in a tough time in education.
I think that leads us to our last question. We have a few minutes here, and welcome the all panelists to add. their thoughts. Andrea from Austin, looking forward, just what are the other opportunities that will support educators in a climate where, Andrea asserts there's an increasing lack of teacher autonomy and respect. But just what are some of those other opportunities that we may be able to see as for supporting educators?
$1 million question.
Not it.
I mean, just to piggyback off of what I just said, I think this is an opportunity for teachers to really tap into what they believe in, really tap into why did I get in this work, and really tap into their own voices. I mean, I'm not saying that every teacher should become a politician or an organizer, but if that's what it takes to be the best champion for your kids, then that's what it's going to take. So I would say this is a great opportunity for teachers to use their voices, not just in the classroom, but outside of the classroom, to really learn the work, to really learn why they're in it, and to seek support in various ways.
You know, I was thinking about the last two questions, and I have never had a teacher sit in my office and say he or she was leaving the profession based upon the politics, which I think is really interesting. I've had a teacher sit in my office and say that he or she was leaving because when he bought a home, his neighbor said, "How can you afford that? You're a teacher." So in thinking of all of it, I agree that our teachers need to unite and have a voice and at least exercise their right to vote and some of those things. We have a lot of teachers in the state, and they sometimes don't realize how much of a voice they can have. So I think that's really huge. But I also think that the teachers we have in the field are there because they want to help kids, and I think that's something we can't forget, just how important it is for teachers, because teachers are the ones who influence the next generation. And I was talking about how kids don't usually go into fields of expertise if they had a teacher that didn't support them, or if they didn't like a subject because they didn't like a teacher. And so I think sometimes we forget just how important teachers are because they are helping the next generation constantly. And so, whatever we do, we have to find solutions because we need teachers, because we will always have kids. So.
Oh, good. Yeah, thank y'all so much for taking the time to do this. And I know there's much we could have talked about, a number of other things in addition to the things we covered today. But yeah, grateful for y'all, bringing interesting insight to this discussion. And yeah, thank y'all for all coming and listening to us, and the previous panel as well. And yeah, thanks so much. So thanks, Matt.
No, thank you, everyone. And of course, you can continue to read Jaden and Sneha's reporting on Texas Tribune.
Got a story this morning. Go read
There
it.
you go. All right. Thank you so much, everyone.